1. The invisible burden of masculinity. From the moment you're born, society places expectations on you. Expectations to be strong, to never cry, to succeed, to protect, to provide, to endure. And the most insidious part of this is that it's an unspoken rule. A contract that binds you to an idea that a man is someone who must carry it all, without question, without help. Imagine being a boy who is constantly told, "Man up, boys don't cry," or "Be a man." These words, meant to push you into the world, actually shape you into someone you were never meant to be, someone who must always hold it together, no matter the weight of the world on his shoulders. This invisible burden of masculinity is woven into every facet of a man's identity, and yet it's so deeply embedded that no one notices it. Society teaches that a man's worth is measured by his ability to withstand hardship, to endure struggles without showing vulnerability, and to never admit that he is not okay. And from a very young age, boys learn to internalize these messages. The words "be a man" don't just suggest strength, they define it. The idea that a man must be stoic, unbreakable, and self-sufficient becomes the core of his identity. As he grows, these expectations grow with him, becoming a constant, unspoken pressure. But what happens when this invisible weight becomes too much to carry? When the constant demand for resilience and endurance starts to break the very foundation it was built upon, men often suffer in silence, carrying their burdens alone, feeling as though asking for help is a sign of weakness. But what if the true strength lies not in carrying the weight silently, but in confronting it, in acknowledging it, and in finding the courage to share it? What if being a man means not just enduring, but also growing through vulnerability? 2. Archetypes of masculinity: the warrior, the king, the magician, the lover. From the ancient myths of Hercules to modern depictions of the alpha male, men have been taught to embody certain archetypes. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, identified 4 primary archetypes of masculinity: the warrior, the king, the magician, and the lover. Each represents a different aspect of what it means to be a man, but also comes with its own challenges and struggles. The warrior is the symbol of strength, courage, and resilience. He is expected to fight, to conquer, and to never back down. But in a world that values constant competition, what happens to the warrior when the battles are over, and he has nothing left to fight for? The king archetype represents leadership, control, and authority. He is the protector of his kingdom, but often stands alone, burdened by the responsibility to maintain order and stability. He is expected to be wise, just, and unwavering. When he starts questioning his own decisions, but cannot show doubt, the magician represents knowledge, wisdom, and transformation. He is the thinker, the one who seeks understanding and change. But this comes at a cost. He must remain distant, detached from the emotional turmoil of others. His world is one of intellect, not feeling, which leaves him isolated from the very human connections he seeks to understand. Finally, the lover. This archetype is the emotional core of masculinity, representing connection, compassion, and intimacy. Yet, in a world that discourages emotional expression, the lover is often suppressed. Men are taught to keep their feelings in check, to be stoic, to put their emotions aside in favor of action. But what does it mean to be a man if he cannot connect with his own heart or the hearts of others? These archetypes, the warrior, the king, the magician, the lover, are not mutually exclusive. Every man embodies each of these to some degree. Yet, society often elevates some while suppressing others. The warrior and king are celebrated, while the magician and lover are relegated to the background. The result is a disjointed masculinity that fails to recognize the complexity of the male experience. And in trying to embody only part of himself, a man risks losing sight of who he truly is. 3. Social conditioning from childhood to adulthood. From the moment a boy is born, society begins to shape him. From the way he's dressed to the toys he's given, everything around him sends a message about what it means to be a man. He's told to be tough, to be brave, to never show weakness. These early lessons are reinforced at school, at home, and in the media. Boys are taught that their value lies in their ability to perform, to win, to succeed. They are taught to suppress emotions like fear, sadness, and vulnerability, emotions that are deemed weak or feminine. Instead, they are taught to embrace aggression, competition, and independence. As boys grow into teenagers, these lessons become even more deeply ingrained. The idea of being a man becomes synonymous with stoicism, control, and emotional distance. The pressure to conform to this ideal increases, especially in a world that prizes success and achievement above all else. Teenage boys are told to man up when they're feeling down or scared, to take it like a man when they face hardship. These phrases, seemingly harmless, teach them that any display of vulnerability is a threat to their masculinity. The message is clear. To be a man is to endure without complaint, to hide your feelings, and to keep moving forward no matter what. This conditioning doesn't stop in adolescence. It continues into adulthood, where men are expected to be the providers, the protectors, and the leaders. Society reinforces the idea that a man's worth is defined by his ability to succeed in his career, to maintain control in his personal life, and to always appear unshaken. A man who struggles emotionally or mentally is often seen as weak or incapable. And so, he keeps quiet, he carries his burdens alone, and he suffers in silence. But what happens when a man is never taught to express his feelings, never shown how to ask for help, and never given the tools to cope with life's challenges in a healthy way? The answer is clear. He becomes disconnected from himself and from others. He becomes trapped in a cycle of self-reliance and emotional suppression. The question then becomes, what if we change the way we teach boys to become men? What if we taught them that true strength lies not in silence, but in honesty? What if we encourage them to embrace vulnerability and connection, rather than hiding behind the facade of stoic perfection? 4. The silent contract: how men are expected to endure. There's an unspoken contract that men are handed from an early age, one that dictates their value is directly tied to their ability to endure. To bear the weight of the world without flinching, to never ask for help, to put up with pain and discomfort without revealing it to others. This contract, though invisible, is deeply ingrained in the male psyche. It defines what it means to be a man, and it's reinforced at every turn. From childhood, boys are taught that to be strong is to keep their struggles hidden, to wear a mask of composure no matter how much they are hurting inside. As men grow, this silent agreement becomes more pronounced. They enter adulthood with the belief that their worth is tied to their ability to provide, to protect, and to succeed. There is little room for emotional vulnerability, and no space to acknowledge pain or weakness. The expectation is clear: you must endure. You must survive. You must succeed, no matter the cost. But the consequences of this contract are devastating. Men who are conditioned to suppress their emotions often end up isolated, disconnected from others, and trapped in a cycle of internal struggle. They may appear strong on the outside, but internally, they are battling with anxiety, depression, and burnout. The pressure to meet societal expectations becomes unbearable, and many men turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms, substance abuse, aggression, or complete emotional detachment to deal with the overwhelming weight of it all. The real tragedy, however, is that many men don't even realize they are trapped in this cycle. They believe that this is simply what it means to be a man. They think that their suffering is normal, that it's just part of the deal. But what if it doesn't have to be this way? What if strength is not about enduring in silence, but about facing the truth of one's feelings and seeking support when needed? What if true masculinity is not about carrying the burden alone, but about sharing it and finding strength in connection? 5. Emotional suppression: the silent suffering. When men are taught to suppress their emotions, they are also taught to suppress their humanity. The emotional cost of this suppression is immense, yet so often invisible. From an early age, boys learn that to express vulnerability is to be weak, to show pain is to fail. They are taught to bottle up their emotions, to hide their feelings behind a mask of stoicism and control. This emotional suppression becomes a part of their identity, one that they carry with them into adulthood. But what happens when those emotions, which have been hidden for so long, finally have nowhere to go? The answer is clear: they fester. They manifest as anxiety, depression, stress, and burnout. They emerge in strained relationships, in bursts of anger, in a sense of isolation, and in the inability to connect with others on a deep, meaningful level. Men who struggle with emotional suppression often find themselves locked in an internal battle, unsure of how to express what they're feeling or even what they are feeling in the first place. The consequences of this emotional repression are not only psychological but physical. Studies show that men are significantly less likely than women to seek help for mental health issues. They are less likely to talk about their struggles with friends, family, or partners, and more likely to bottle everything up until it becomes overwhelming. This leads to a dangerous cycle of isolation, where the very people who need help the most are often the ones who suffer in silence. The real tragedy is that men are taught to believe that this is normal. They are conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to their ability to endure, to carry the weight without complaint. But true strength is not about ignoring pain. It's about acknowledging it, confronting it, and growing through it. The first step toward breaking free from the cycle of emotional suppression is to realize that it's okay to not be okay. That asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of courage. And in doing so, men can begin to heal, to connect, and to redefine what it truly means to be strong. 6. The cost of suppression: anxiety, depression, and burnout. Men are expected to carry their burdens silently, but the cost of this emotional suppression is devastating. Over time, the weight of unspoken pain, unexpressed fears, and unacknowledged struggles begins to take a toll on their mental and physical health. Anxiety, depression, and burnout. These are not just abstract concepts. They are very real consequences of a lifetime spent suppressing one's emotions. The pressure to maintain a facade of strength can be overwhelming, and many men find themselves trapped in a cycle of internal conflict, unable to express what they are truly feeling. The statistics are alarming. Men are far less likely than women to seek help for mental health issues. They are less likely to talk about their struggles, whether with friends, family, or therapists, and more likely to cope through unhealthy means: alcohol, drugs, anger, or isolation. This internalized pressure to tough it out has a profound impact on their well-being. Anxiety becomes a constant companion, lurking in the background, while depression takes root and slowly erodes their sense of self-worth. Burnout becomes inevitable as they push themselves harder and harder, believing that their worth is tied to their productivity, to their ability to succeed without showing weakness. But the most tragic part of this is that men often feel like they are the only ones who are struggling. They look around and see others seemingly handling life's challenges with ease, while they are drowning under the weight of their own silent suffering. They are taught that asking for help is a sign of failure, and so they continue to carry their burdens alone, convinced that they are not allowed to be vulnerable. This isolation only deepens their pain, making it harder to break free from the cycle of suppression and self-doubt. The truth is, emotional suppression does not make a man stronger. It makes him weaker. Strength is not about bearing the weight of the world without asking for help. It's about acknowledging the weight, reaching out for support, and facing the struggle with courage and authenticity. True strength is found in vulnerability, not in silence. And until men are allowed to express their struggles without fear of judgment, they will continue to carry the silent cost of suppression. 7. The fear of weakness: why men avoid seeking help. For many men, the fear of being seen as weak is one of the greatest obstacles they face when it comes to seeking help. From an early age, they are taught that vulnerability is synonymous with weakness. Asking for help is seen as admitting failure, something that contradicts the very idea of masculinity that has been ingrained in them. The fear of being labeled as incapable, as less than, drives many men to suffer in silence. They internalize the belief that to be a man means to endure hardship without complaint, to carry their burdens alone without showing any signs of struggle. But the reality is, this fear of weakness is a powerful force that keeps men locked in isolation. The pressure to conform to these societal standards becomes overwhelming, and as a result, many men avoid seeking help, even when they desperately need it. They may feel ashamed to admit that they are struggling with mental health, relationships, or personal challenges because they have been conditioned to believe that they must be self-sufficient and unshakable. This mindset leads to emotional numbness, self-doubt, and a profound sense of disconnection. The tragedy is that this fear of being perceived as weak not only harms the individual man, but also impacts the people around him. Friends, family, and partners may not understand why a man is withdrawing or why he refuses to express what he's feeling. They may even try to offer support, but the man, convinced that he must handle everything on his own, pushes them away. This cycle of isolation and suppression makes it harder for him to break free and seek the help he needs. But the truth is, vulnerability is not weakness. It is a sign of strength, a sign of courage. The ability to ask for help, to admit that you are struggling, is not a sign of failure, but a sign of emotional maturity and self-awareness. It is through vulnerability that men can begin to heal, to connect with others, and to build a more authentic version of themselves. The true strength of a man lies not in his ability to suffer in silence, but in his ability to face his struggles with honesty, to reach out for help when needed, and to grow through his challenges. 8. Redefining strength, the courage to acknowledge struggle. What if the definition of strength we've been taught all our lives is wrong? What if strength isn't about enduring suffering in silence, but about acknowledging our struggles, facing them head-on, and having the courage to ask for help when we need it? For so long, men have been taught that true strength means not showing weakness, not showing pain, not showing vulnerability. But the reality is, strength doesn't come from hiding our emotions or pretending everything is okay when it's not. Strength comes from having the courage to face the truth, to look at the difficulties in our lives, and to be honest about what we are experiencing. The old definition of masculinity, the one that tells men to man up and never show weakness, is a narrow and limiting one. It demands that men suppress their emotions and carry the weight of the world without asking for help. But the truth is, real strength is not about pretending to be invincible. It's about acknowledging our human limitations, accepting that we can't do everything on our own, and having the wisdom to know when to reach out for support. It's about being brave enough to be vulnerable, to show up authentically, and to allow ourselves to be seen as we truly are. In a world that tells men to be strong at all costs, this shift in perspective can be revolutionary. It's time to challenge the outdated ideals of masculinity and embrace a new definition of strength, one that includes emotional honesty, self-compassion, and connection. A man who can admit his struggles, who can express his pain without shame, is not weak. He is strong in a way that transcends the rigid, outdated standards that have been imposed upon him. True strength is about facing our difficulties with courage, not avoiding them. It's about embracing our vulnerability, not hiding it. And it's about realizing that we are all human and no one should have to bear the weight of the world alone. When we redefine strength in this way, we open up new possibilities for healing, growth, and connection. 9. The path to healing vulnerability is strength. True healing begins the moment we stop hiding from our pain. Men have long been taught to suppress their emotions, to bury their struggles beneath layers of stoicism and strength. But this approach only leads to further suffering. The key to breaking the cycle of emotional suppression lies in embracing vulnerability. It is through vulnerability that men can truly begin to heal. It is the courage to be honest with oneself and others about what is truly going on inside. To admit that you are struggling, that you are not okay, is not a sign of weakness. It is, in fact, a sign of immense strength. The idea that vulnerability equals weakness is one of the most damaging myths of modern masculinity. Vulnerability is not about being fragile or incapable. It is about being open, about allowing yourself to experience the full range of human emotions without judgment. It is about trusting others enough to show them the parts of yourself that have been hidden for so long. When men allow themselves to be vulnerable, they open up new possibilities for connection, for healing, and for growth. But this process isn't easy. It requires unlearning the messages that have been ingrained over a lifetime. It requires breaking free from the notion that being a man means never showing emotion, never asking for help, never admitting to weakness. It requires the strength to acknowledge that, yes, you are human, and that it's okay to not have all the answers, to not always be in control. It's in those moments of vulnerability that men can experience true transformation. By sharing their pain, their struggles, their fears, men can begin to rebuild themselves not as the unbreakable warrior society once demanded, but as authentic, whole individuals. Vulnerability is not a liability. It is the doorway to emotional freedom. And once a man steps through that door, he discovers that true strength lies not in endurance, but in the willingness to feel, to heal, and to connect with others on a deeper level. It is through vulnerability that men can finally begin to break free from the burdens of silence and isolation that have held them back for so long. 10. Breaking the cycle, a new definition of masculinity. For centuries, men have been told that their value is determined by their ability to endure, to provide, and to never show weakness. The pressure to live up to this ideal has been crushing, yet the expectations have remained unchanged. But what if this version of masculinity isn't serving men at all? What if, instead of making men stronger, it's actually making them weaker? It's time to break the cycle. It's time to redefine what it means to be a man. True masculinity is not about the ability to suppress your emotions or carry the weight of the world on your own. It's not about being invincible, impervious to pain, or always in control. True masculinity is about authenticity, vulnerability, and connection. It's about being able to acknowledge your struggles, to ask for help when needed, and to be open about your feelings. It's about realizing that you don't have to carry your burdens alone. Strength is not about isolation. It's about community. It's about knowing that true power comes from the ability to connect with others and to express yourself honestly. Men don't have to live up to outdated standards of masculinity that define them solely by their ability to succeed or be strong. They can be strong in their vulnerability, in their willingness to face their emotions and their challenges. Men can be leaders, providers, and protectors, but they can also be vulnerable, emotional, and connected. The greatest strength lies in the courage to be yourself, to be open, and to embrace the full range of human experience. It's time to rewrite the narrative of masculinity, one that includes emotional depth, honesty, and self-compassion. The change begins with each man who is willing to redefine what it means to be strong. It begins with each man who is ready to shed the mask of invulnerability and embrace the truth of his emotions. And it starts with you. The moment you realize that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength, is the moment you begin to break free from the burden of silence. It is the moment you start living as your truest self, free from the constraints of outdated expectations, and open to the possibility of a new, healthier masculinity.